Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something that's literally been hiding in plain sight for over a decade. Yep, we're talking about Bitcoin. But look, we're not going to sit here and obsess over daily price charts or, get swept up in whatever the media's panicking about today. Instead, we're looking at the actual underlying architecture, the highly predictable DNA driving this whole crypto market. It is an open secret, incredibly reliable, and yet it's practically invisible to the average investor.
So think about this paradox for a second. If there's really a predictable pattern, like a rhythm Bitcoin follows like clockwork, why do so many people end up totally losing their shirts? Why does the everyday retail investor almost always buy at the absolute top and panic sell at the bottom? Well, the answer comes down to human psychology and really a failure to zoom out. So in this explainer, we're going to do exactly that. We're going to zoom out together, tune out all that noise, and look strictly at the hard data. All right, here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover Bitcoin's open secret, the apple tree analogy, the history of the halving, the math behind cycles, why investors still fail, and finally wrap it up with the road to 2029. Let's get right into it. Section 1. Bitcoin's open secret, the 4-year cycle.
So what exactly is this open secret? Well, simply put, every 4 years, Bitcoin goes through 4 exact stages. Let's break them down. Step 1 is accumulation. This is the absolute depths of the bear market. Prices have crashed, everyone on TV is saying Bitcoin is dead, but this is exactly when the smart money quietly steps in and buys up the bottom. Then, boom, we hit step 2, the bull run. A programmed supply shock hits the network and the price just explodes upward, which inevitably leads right into step 3, the euphoria peak. This is when your neighbor, your barber, the morning news, everyone is screaming about Bitcoin going to the moon. The FOMO, the fear of missing out, is off the charts. And finally, step 4, the correction. A devastating 70 to 85% crash that completely flushes out all those late buyers and resets the whole board back to step 1. And it just repeats, endlessly.
Moving on to Section 2, the apple tree analogy, understanding the halving. Now you might be wondering, what actually triggers that massive stage 2 supply shock? Well, it all pivots around one mathematically guaranteed event, the halving. Basically, every 210,000 blocks, which works out to roughly 4 years, the Bitcoin protocol automatically cuts the reward given to miners completely in half. This is hard-coded into Bitcoin's very DNA. No government, no central bank, no CEO can step in and override it. It is just an unchangeable law of the network.
To really get why this matters, let's use a brilliantly simple analogy. Imagine a village that relies on one massive apple tree. Now imagine if, overnight, by some weird law of nature, that tree suddenly started producing exactly half the apples it used to. The villagers, they still want apples just as much as they did yesterday. The demand is totally identical, but the fresh supply was just slashed by 50%. What happens? The price of those apples has to skyrocket. That is exactly what the Bitcoin halving does. It's just basic supply and demand economics, but enforced by immutable code.
Okay, Section 3, History of the Halving, the historical track record. Seriously, don't just take my word for this. Look at the sheer consistency of the historical data here. Back in 2012, the first halving dropped the reward from 50 down to 25 Bitcoin. The pre-halving price? Just $12. But the post-halving peak? $1,000. Absolutely massive. Then in 2016, the reward dropped to 12.5. The price went from $650 all the way up to nearly 20 grand. Jump to 2020, the reward hit 6.25. The price skyrocketed from about $8,800 to almost $69,000. And in our most recent 2024 halving, that reward dropped again to a mere 3.125 Bitcoin. Every single time, without fail, the pre-halving price gets totally eclipsed by a multi-$1,000 cycle peak. This cascading drop in supply relentlessly forces that price ceiling higher and higher.
Section 4. The math behind cycles, predicting the peak.
So, okay, we know the price goes up, but can we predict exactly when? Well, 480 days. That is the magic number. Across all those historical cycles we just looked at, it takes an average of exactly 480 days after a halving event for Bitcoin to hit its absolute cycle peak. In 2012, it was 367 days. In 2016, it's like 526 days. And in 2020 and 2024, it hovered right around 549 days. When you average the whole thing out, it forms this highly reliable window. Honestly, this asset acts like a mathematical metronome.
But, the metronome definitely swings both ways. 79%. That is the average devastating price drop during the correction phase, step 4 of our cycle.
After hitting that glorious all-time high, the market relentlessly bleeds out, wiping away roughly 80% of its value to find the new bottom. This is literally where dreams are crushed, and the wild part is, it happens every single time.
Which leads right into Section 5, Why Investors Still Fail. The human element.
So we gotta address the elephant in the room. If this data is so blatantly clear, why do investors still fail? Well, the crucial point is that human emotion completely overrides logical data. People have terrible short-term memory, they lack the immense absolute patience required to hold an asset for 4 full years, they fall victim to recency bias, thinking whatever the price is doing today is what it's going to do forever, they get totally deafened by media noise, and they end up buying right at step 3 during peak euphoria. And lately, there's even a new trap. People falsely believing that because Wall Street ETFs arrived, oh, this cycle is dead or the pattern is broken. But guys, the data shows the cycle is playing out exactly as it always has.
I absolutely love this comparison from our source material because it hits the nail right on the head. Think about your physical health, right? Everyone knows the open secret. Walk 10,000 steps a day, eat your veggies, get some exercise. It is not a mystery, yet millions struggle with it because knowing the secret requires the daily discipline to actually execute it. Building wealth in the crypto market is the exact same thing. Holding through a 4-year cycle is an open secret, but sitting on your hands while your portfolio drops 50% or refusing to sell when it pumps 100% in a single month, man, that takes an iron stomach. Knowing the cycle is completely useless without the conviction to stick to it.
Section 6, The Road to 2029, The Next Cycle.
Okay, so if we actually have the conviction, how do we play this? Here is the actionable roadmap, completely based on the historical data we've just reviewed. We had our most recent halving in April 2024. Now, following the typical post-peak correction, the data suggests we're going to hit our ultimate cycle bottom in late 2026. From there, we look forward to April 2028. That's the next halving, where the reward will drop to an incredibly scarce 1.5 Bitcoin per block. And 480 days after that, we arrive at our expected all-time high in 2029. What's even crazier is that 2028 aligns perfectly with massive macroeconomic events like US elections and projected peaks in global liquidity. It really is setting up to be a perfect storm. But let's ground ourselves in the current reality for a second. Right now, as we move through this current cycle, the market is actively seeking its bottom. The pattern suggests that in the fourth quarter of 2026, Bitcoin will likely find its absolute floor somewhere in that $50,000 to $65,000 range. And when that happens, it signals the ultimate accumulation phase. Remember step 1? That's when the smart money steps in to buy. A mid-cycle crash isn't some disaster. Historically speaking, it's the exact opportunity the cycle hands you on a silver platter before the next halving supply shock hits.
We've seen the data, we understand the math, we know about the apple tree. At the end of the day, this cycle is not a secret. It's a test of conviction. When 2029 rolls around and Bitcoin is hitting new, unimaginable highs, people are going to ask, wow, who were the lucky ones that bought the bottom? But you know it isn't luck, it's discipline. So the only question left for you is, will you let short-term noise distract you, or will you have the patience for 2029? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this structured look at the data gives you a powerful new lens to view the market through. Keep learning, stay focused, and I'll see you next time.